What up, guys? This is Kingelffe back with my pointed stick, and oh, almost killed that guy. Today we are going to look at Minecraft villager mechanics for 1.14, 3, and 4. So I've held off on making a 1.14 Minecraft mechanics video for a while, as Mojang keeps changing villager mechanics on me every time I get close to being able to make a video. But I think they've finally stopped making major changes. There are some small changes coming in 1.14.4, but nothing that should change the video too drastically, so I feel comfortable making the video now. We're going to go through the same structure we did last time. We're going to go through the basics, then the mechanics, then the use for those mechanics. So I'm going to jump over to my prepared area and we'll get the video started. Alright, so this is going to be a fairly long video, so I will have timestamps in the description for all of these different points in the video. But how we're going to start out is we're going to look at the basics. So how do you get villagers and how do you give them jobs? As well as we're going to talk a little bit about Illagers and Raids. From there, we're going to move into the more mechanical side of things. So we're going to look at how the villager schedules work, breeding, movement, trade, and iron golem spawning. Then after that, I'm going to take you into my own world, and I'm going to show you some of the more practical uses for knowing all of these things. So I'm going to show you an iron golem farm. We're going to look at a trading hall and an infinite villager breeder. So remember to look at the description if you're looking for timestamps, if you only need to know about how breeding works, or if you only want to know about the schedules. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alright, so villagers, how to get them, and how to give them jobs. So in previous versions of Minecraft, there were only 6 different villager professions. There was the farmer, there was the librarian, priest, blacksmith, butcher, and nitwit. So each of them had a different skin, and within those 6 professions, there were different subclasses. So within farmer, you had your shepherd, your farmer, all of those different guys that would give you different trades. You didn't really know what they were until you started trading with them. So in 1.14 and all of the updates since, they've actually given each different sub-profession a different skin and a different workstation. So how it worked before was a villager would just have a profession when you met him, and he would trade things for that profession. So for farmer, he'd trade you food. And they would lock up their trades occasionally, and then you could trade with them a bit more to get them to unlock their trades. That is no longer the case. So how it works now is every villager profession has a workstation associated with them. So for example, this is our farmer here. So for a farmer, their corresponding workstation is a composter, which is one of the new 1.14 blocks. And if you trade with this guy right now, let's say, oh, his price is hiked way up. I must have killed a bunch of villagers in the area. Right now, if I were to trade a bunch of carrots with him and his trade were to lock up, I would have to wait for him to interact with his composter before he would refresh his trade. And he can do that twice per day. Actually, you just heard a sound there. That was all of these guys refreshing their trades by interacting with their workstations. So I'm going to quickly go through all of the different villager professions that I have here, and it'll give you an idea of all the different types of villagers in the game now. So we've got unemployed guy. He looks the same as he always has. And if you try and right-click him, he'll just shake his head and won't do anything. So this is a guy without a workstation. If I were to put down a composter here, then because it's within his area, he would detect that composter and become a farmer. So we got the farmer, we got the fisherman with a barrel as his workstation. We have the Fletcher with a fletching table as his workstation, and a shepherd with a loom as his workstation. So those 4 previously made up the farmer profession in previous versions of the game. Then we've got our librarian with the lectern, and a cartographer with the cartography table. These guys previously made up the librarian class. Then we've got the cleric with the brewing stand as his workstation. In previous versions of the game, he was always a cleric or priest. Then we've got the armorer with the blast furnace as his workstation, the weaponsmith with a grindstone, and a toolsmith with a smithing table. Previously, these guys made up blacksmith. Then we've got the butcher with the smoker. Sorry, losing my voice there. And a leather worker with a cauldron for one reason or another as his workstation. These guys previously made up the butcher profession. And then we have a brand new villager, the stonemason here with the stonecutter as his workstation. So this guy here, he's really useful for me. I usually build underground, and when you progress his trades, he actually trades stuff like stone for emeralds, diorites, granite, so you can get rid of all that useless stuff by getting a bunch of tool masons. Nope, stone masons, not tool masons. So those are your different kinds of villagers that you have in the game now. And of course you've got the nitwit. I wasn't able to get one of them over here because they don't spawn very often when you're just plopping down villager eggs. Alright, moving on. So in previous versions of the game, a village was defined by the number of valid doors and villagers in the area. And the max population was 35% of the valid doors. This confused a lot of people. That's why I made a video previously on village mechanics, because these were lesser known things. So you had to do math, and it was a real pain. So now, what you're looking at here is a self-contained village. You don't need the crops or the bell or anything, I just added them in because they're generally things you find within a village. So, now how a village is defined in the game is number of valid beds and number of villagers. So the max population that a village can have is the number of valid beds. And a valid bed is just defined as an unobstructed bed. So because this villager can get to this bed, it is a valid bed, and the max population of this village is 1. So I'll just do a quick flyby of all these guys again, if you wanted to see what all of them are. Alright, cool. And another note, these guys are the plains biome villagers. So there are a couple different skins that you can get for the villagers depending on what biome you're in. There's the plains guys, which I have here, the snowy tundra, the savanna, the desert, the taiga, and the snowy taiga guys. Each of them have a different skin. And if a village somehow populates or you bring villagers over to a biome I didn't list there, then they'll take on the plains biome skins, unless they patch that in future versions of the game. They may add some more skins in for different biomes, like Mushroom Islands or something like that. Alright, so these guys will naturally spawn inside villages. So there's a village over there. How they spawn is every house in the village that has a bed in it. I'm just going to quickly head over that way and find one of those houses. I think these guys here have beds in them. This one's completely covered. Alright, so every house with a bed in it, you get 1 villager. And that is how villagers naturally spawn in villages. So if you had, let's say, 16 houses in the village, and 4 of them had beds in them, then 4 villagers would naturally spawn in your village. I'm just going to time set. That way we don't have mob spawning or anything. And some of these houses will naturally spawn with workstations in them. And some areas like the farms will have composters in them. So as the villagers spawn into the world, they're not going to have any professions. But as they come by workstations, they will take on that profession. It is completely possible to not have any workstations in a village when you first get there, so they could all be unemployed when you get there. Just throw down some composters or barrels or something, and they'll all take on professions, and you can get your trading going. So that pretty much covers the first part of the basics, villagers and where they come from. Alright, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Illagers and Raids. So for this, I'm going to go over to a little fenced off area that I have up there because I don't want all of these guys just coming in and trampling my villagers. So what we're going to talk about is how the patrols spawn and how the raids work. So basically, Illager patrol parties, they'll start spawning in your world after it's been running for 100 minutes or 5 in-game days. So once those guys start spawning in, you're going to get a group of 5 pillagers. One of them will be a raid leader. Let's see if we can get one of those guys in here. Come on. There we go. So I only had to spawn in about 20 to get one. But one of the 5 pillagers that come into the village is going to be these guys here with the banner on their head. This is the pillager party leader. So all of the pillagers are going to follow him into the village. If he is killed, then you will get Bad Omen. So this guy right here. That effect will last for 100 minutes or until you enter a village, at which point a raid will start. So we're just going to clear that because we don't want that to happen. So clear, nope. Effect, clear, me, and Bad Omen. There we go, boom, effect gone. If you didn't know how to remove an effect, that's how you do it. Alright, so the chance of these guys spawning, so the raid parties, is every 10 to 11 minutes after that 100-minute mark, there's a 20% chance that a pillager party will spawn in and roam into your village. So that gives you an idea of how often this happens. I'm just going to go ahead and murder a bunch of these guys so that we don't have to listen to them anymore. And also so that I can move on to the next part, which is showing you all of the different guys that will spawn in a raid. So we'll leave one of them, because pillagers will spawn in your raid, as well as vindicators. These guys are pretty nasty. They'll come at you with an iron axe, and they do a ton of damage. Then you've got evokers, which are also real nasty because they use magic to like shoot roots at you through the ground or something like that. And also they will spawn vexes into the world, which are just nasty on their own. Then you got the witches, which everyone knows about already. And the worst one for last, Ravagers. These guys here have about the same amount of health as an Iron Golem, and they hit almost as hard. So we're going to get rid of these guys again. Alright, so I did a little bit of testing earlier today, and I determined that in a raid, the amount of waves depends on what difficulty you're on. So on easy, it'll be 4 waves, on normal, it'll be 6 waves, and on hard, it'll be 8 waves. And the Bad Omen effect, it can stack up to 5 times, giving you Bad Omen 5. I'm bad at math, apparently. So for each level of Bad Omen that you have, you will get an extra wave. So you can potentially have up to 13 waves in a hard raid, which is hard because there's more guys spawning in each raid wave up until level 7, and at that point it just kind of plateaus and you get the same amount of raiders every time. So upon finishing a raid, you will get an effect, Hero of the Village. So we're going to give that to us real quick. Nope, that's not how you spell effects. Give me Hero of the Village. And we'll just give it to us for 1,000 seconds so that see it. Level 1. So that's the Hero of the Village icon up there. And we have it for 16 minutes. I think you only get it for 5 in-game days or something like that. Probably should have written that down somewhere. I'll put it in the comments of the video if that's wrong. But if you come over to these guys here, then they will recognize you as a hero of the village and start throwing random stuff at you, giving you gifts. So just now, they threw a fish, an arrow, a piece of wool, and 2 pumpkin pies at me. Never said that they were good gifts, but gifts nonetheless. Alright, so another real quick thing before we move on to the mechanics part of the video. I'm just going to show you a command real quick that you can use on villagers to get some information on them. So if you point at them and you type /data, no, that's not how you spell, get, and then we want the entity that we're staring at, so whatever that random number and letter sequence is. And if you just leave it at that, then it'll give you all of the information on this villager. A lot of this you're probably never going to use, but this is how you access it if you need it. The one that we're mainly going to focus on is their brain. So this right here is going to... Oh, man. We're just going to clear the logs so that we can focus. Okay, cool. So this is going to show you where his workstation is, the last time he worked, where his bed is, the last time he slept, and this will give you the information that you need to make an iron golem farm, for example, or to see why he's not restocking his trades. So if he's lost his workstation, then he's obviously not going to restock his trades. You have access to commands. This is a real useful thing, especially if you don't know what's going on. The other thing that is kind of cool is these guys have 8 hidden inventory slots that I mentioned in one of my previous videos. So if I throw him these 3 stacks of carrots, we can actually see those inventory slots if we type in inventory on this command. So we can see that he has 3 stacks of carrots. So 1, 2, 3, and 64 on each of them. So that's how you use this command, just so that you know what I'm doing later in the video if I use it. Okay, it's time to talk about villager schedules. So a Minecraft day consists of 24,000 game ticks. So that lasts about 20 minutes. Villagers do stuff between 0 ticks and 14,000 ticks, depending on the type of villager they are, whether they're a employed villager, an unemployed villager, which I've got a bunch of over there, a child, or a nitwit. So I'm going to quickly go over all of the different schedules and show you the clock here. That way you can see where the game ticks leave the clock, because obviously if you don't have access to commands, you're not going to be able to see what the game tick time is. So I'm going to quickly go through the employed villager schedule while looking at the clock, and then I'll quickly run through the unemployed, child, and nitwit schedule without looking at the clock. So, starting at 0 ticks, we'll go time set 0. So that's where you start the day for a villager. So an employed villager at this point is going to start working, and they're able to breed as well during this time. So they're going to go to their job stations, and if there's another villager nearby and they're both willing, they will breed. So that lasts until 2,000 ticks. So that's where that is. So at this point, they will no longer be able to breed. They're just going to work. So they'll stand beside their workstations. Occasionally, you'll see them walk away from their workstations. So like he's doing right now. This is what's considered gathering resources. So he doesn't actually do anything during that time, but he will wander away from time to time, and it's implied that he's gathering resources during that time. So while they're working, there are 2 types of villagers that will actually do different tasks while they're working. First one is a farmer. He'll go around and he'll harvest and plant crops during this time. And a librarian, if there are bookshelves nearby, he'll go and inspect the bookshelves. The rest of them will just kind of stand around their workstations. They don't really do anything. other than restock their trades from time to time if they're locked out. So that's that. Then from there we jump to 8,000. So that's where that is on the clock. At 8,000 game ticks, employed villagers will gather. So at this point, they're basically taking a break from work. They'll either go to a meeting point, which is the center of town where there's bells and stuff like that, or if they're too far away from that, then they'll just kind of wander aimlessly for a little bit, and sometimes they keep working, but usually they don't restock or anything during this time. But yeah, they'll wander around looking for villagers to gossip with, and if they're both willing, then they can breed during this time as well. Quickly touching on gossip, there are 6 different types of gossip in the game, and they're all different values that'll affect villagers a different way. There is minor negative, minor positive, major positive, golem, and trade. And each of them, I'm sure you can figure out what they do. For example, you can get a major negative gossip from a guy if you kill someone nearby. So if I were to kill this villager and that guy saw it, his gossip type would change to major negative. So let's go see if my zombie villager I started over here is cured yet. Yeah, he is. So if you have access to commands, you can actually see the type of gossip he has. So we're going to get that real quick. So data gets entity this guy. So if we look up here, his gossip type is major positive. So you only get that if you hear a villager or if you're hero of the village. Minor positive is a data type in the game, but there's no way to currently get it. Trade you get from trading with villagers, obviously, and golem is when they feel kind of unsafe and they feel that they need a golem, but we'll touch more on that later. So that's what happens at 8,000 game ticks. So from there we go to 10,000. Oh, apparently I'm screaming it into the chat log. So that's where that is on the clock. At 10,000, villagers will start working again, so they'll head back to their workstations, and they'll continue to work. If they're farmers, they'll continue to farm. Otherwise, they'll just kind of stand around their workstations again and possibly refill their trades. So after that, we go to 11,000 game ticks. So that's where that is. So at 11,000 game ticks, your villagers are going to go home. So they're going to start heading towards their beds, wherever those are. They'll wander around the village for a little bit until they get within range of their bed, because you can see that the sun's starting to go down. If they run into other villagers along the way, they can breed during this time as well, if they are both willing. But this time period doesn't last very long, because that only happens until 12,000 game ticks. So sun's barely visible on the clock now. At this point, villagers are going to start returning home. You can see this guy's starting to wander back towards his house. Was it that guy? Yeah, I think that's that guy's house. But they'll use their random movement algorithm to get there. So at this point, the employed villagers' day is over. And once they get back to their house, as soon as they are beside their bed, so, oh, there's not actually a bed in this house. This guy here, he just went in. So, he'll go in here, and once he's in his house, if he doesn't jump in bed right away, he will not leave the house again until 0 game ticks reaches. But, more than likely, he will jump into bed, and that's it for him for the day. So that's the life of an employed villager. So I'm not going to do the clock thing for the rest of the guys. I'm just going to time set to the day. We'll go 2,000, so that they just start working. So that's employed villagers. unemployed villagers, however, between 0 game ticks and 2,000 game ticks, they will wander. So we'll touch more on this in the movement section of the video, but essentially wandering, they're going around the village and they're looking for other villagers or workstations or whatnot. At 8,000 game ticks, they will gather with the employed villagers and try and breed and gossip and everything. Then from 10,000 to 11,000 game ticks, they will wander again, and then at 11,000 game ticks, they will go home. And that's pretty much the life of an unemployed villager, unless they find a workstation at some point during the day, in which case they will assume the schedule of an employed villager. A child, we're going to get some of them in here. So, there we go. So these guys are actually going to stick together throughout the day. You can see that they're chasing each other around. From 0 game ticks till 10,000 game ticks, they will be playing. So they'll be running around the village playing tag and everything. Oh, I should really get rid of these creepers. So yeah, you'll see them running around the village throughout the day. They'll rarely ever break up. And then at 11,000 game ticks, they will go home, and at 12,000, they'll go to sleep. So the outlier for villagers, I think we have one over here, is the Nitwit. Unless he got killed off at some point. Nope. Here we go. So, the Nitwit, he is kind of a lazy dude. So, he sleeps in and he comes home late. So, at 0 game ticks, when everyone else has gotten up and gone to work or started wandering, he'll still be asleep. He doesn't wake up until 2,000 game ticks. And at that point, he will wander from 2,000 till 12,000 game ticks, at which point he will go home at 13,000 game ticks and head to sleep until 2,000 again. So this guy is a bit of a different villager too, because he'll generally stay around the outskirts of the village. We'll touch more on that during the movement portion as well, but essentially he's looking for ways to expand the village, because that's really all he's useful for. But yeah, that's the schedule of a villager. Alright, so on to villager breeding. So as I mentioned before, the new system is the total number of villagers that you can have in your village is equal to the amount of valid beds that you have. So as you see right here, I've got 4 valid beds, so my max village population is actually 4. This here is my infinite villager breeder that I designed. You can check that out in my video on my channel. But these guys here, they have to be willing to breed if they're going to. Even if they have the beds, if they're not willing, they won't breed. So to make them willing, you have to give them either 12 carrots, 12 potatoes, 12 beetroot, or 3 bread. And each villager has 8 hidden inventory slots, as I have laid out here. You can only actually see those inventory slots if you have access to that command I was using earlier. But if you load up their inventory with 8 stacks of carrots, let's say, then they can breed 42 times without reloading them. So you can either have some sort of system to refill their food with redstone and some droppers, or you can come by every once in a while and just throw some more carrots into their inventory. That's what I usually do, because I am absolutely terrible with redstone. But yeah, so every once in a while, they will take a census and determine whether or not they can add more villagers to the village. So how that works is right here. So it looks 2 blocks above the center point and 2 blocks below the center point to see if there are any villagers in that area, as well as the game files say 32 blocks in either direction, but my tests indicate it's more like 64 blocks. So I would go 64 just to be safe. But yeah, 64 blocks in either direction for the census. If it detects 4 villagers in this case, then these guys won't be able to breed. However, if there's a villager down here in this green area, it's not detected by the census. So even if there were 3 villagers in the area, if the other guy was standing here, the census would only detect 2 villagers, so they'd still be able to breed 2 more times. We're going to do a time set real quick. That's not how you spell time. just so I don't get overrun by zombies or anything. So, if you find that your villagers aren't breeding, there are a couple things that can contribute to this. A, they're not willing, or there's not enough beds. So that's the first thing I would double check. But there is also about a 5-minute cooldown for their breeding, or at least that's what I figured due to my tests. As well as if I had another villager, let's say, standing here, and I were to kill him right now, or if a zombie came by and punched him, this will cease their breeding for around 3 minutes. So even if they're at 4.5 minutes done their cooldown, and this guy gets killed here, they can add 3 more minutes to that cooldown. So if your villagers aren't breeding, that's likely the case. You just gotta wait a little bit and see if it fixes itself. If not, then I would look around for other villagers in the area, see if your bed count is being taken up or something. Alright, and other than that, the other thing to mention is that babies take about 20 minutes to grow up. So once these guys become willing and breed and the baby villager pops down there, then he'll take 20 minutes before he grows up to a full-size villager. Alright, so movement. Villagers are instinctively going to try and get to safety. So most mobs that they are afraid of, so raid mobs and zombies, villagers will run away within 8 blocks of the mobs. So if I were to place a villager within these 8 blocks, he's going to detect the zombie and try and get away from him. So even if I put him right on the outskirts here, he's going to try and run away. But if I throw down a villager on this block here, outside of that range, he's just going to go about business. He's not running, he's just kind of wandering around. But if he gets within that 8-block radius again, he's going to start running away. Like, oh, he wasn't there long enough for it to matter. So the exception to this rule is the evoker. So the evoker will actually scare a villager within 12 blocks rather than 8 blocks, because they have vexes, so they need to run away a lot quicker. The other thing with their pathfinding AI is they're never going to jump off a cliff or off a building or into a campfire or anything like that. They are somewhat intelligent despite the noises that they make. But their pathfinding does not prevent them from pushing others into danger. So if there's a 1-block gap that they have to walk across but there's another villager on there, then they will push that villager into lava or off a cliff or whatever in order to be safe themselves. So, smart, but not smart at the same time. So, it's time to touch a little bit on wandering. So, during their wandering phase, basically what a villager will do is they will stand in a spot for a random amount of time, and then the game will choose another block within the area to have the villager pathfind to, at which point it'll randomize the amount of time that they stand there again and repeat the process over and over again, unless they find a villager in the area that they want to interact or gossip with, in which case they'll do that. If at any point they find themselves outside the village because of their pathfinding, or if they were chased out by a zombie or something like that, then if the village was within 32 blocks of them, then they'll start pathfinding back towards the village. If, however, they're further than 32 blocks out, they will no longer be considered part of the village, and their bed becomes open again for these guys to breed and make more villagers. So I said that we'd talk a little bit more about the nitwits as well. So as I mentioned before, they stay close to the outskirts of the village, because during their wander time, they're doing something called exploring the outskirts. So essentially what they're doing is they're wandering around the outskirts, and they're looking for things to add to the village. So if I were to throw down a bed out here, and the nitwit or one of the unemployeds detected it, then they would move to that bed and assimilate it into the village. So basically how the village bounds work are 32 blocks from the center point, or however far the distance is to the furthest bed. So the only way that they can expand their village is by exploring the outskirts and detecting new things to add. the unemployed villagers also, while they're wandering and pathfinding, if they find a unused job site within, I believe it's 16 blocks of them, they'll pathfind to that workstation and take on the employment schedule. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it for movement. And we're back to this villager again because we're moving on to trading. So there are 5 different levels of trades for each profession. So if I were to trade a bunch with this guy here, he will upgrade from novice to, see the particles there, to an apprentice. So also those particles there give him, I believe, 4 seconds of regeneration. So if he gets hurt or anything, then just trade with him until you get those particles and he'll actually heal up a little bit. So from apprentice, we go up to journeyman. And from journeyman, we go up to a master, I believe. Expert, sorry. And then from expert, we go up to a master. Oh, throwing emeralds everywhere. Yeah. And once you're at master, there's no more bar because he has the max amount of trades that he can get. So there are actually a set list of trades that each profession will have. There's an awesome chart about it on Reddit. I have yet to find it to be wrong. I will link that in the description below if you guys want to check that out. But each different trade here, you'll notice that they get locked out after a little while. There is a certain amount of trades for every individual item in the game. I'd have to do some testing to find out what those numbers are. I do plan on doing that in the future and making a separate video on it, but that would just make this video even longer than it already is. So we're not going to cover that in this video, but we will in another one. Also, you'll notice that since I'm holding carrots in my hand here, this guy is showing me what he will trade for carrots. So he's willing to give me emeralds for carrots. But if I were to hold suspicious stew in my hand, that was a bad example. I don't have any emeralds left. If I were to hold emeralds in my hand, then he might hold up like melons or something like that. So if we head over here, I have this all set up. So this indicates where this guy can pick up his workstation from. So in any of the green spaces here, this villager will be able to detect his workstation. So if I were to throw it up there, you can see he takes on the farmer profession. But if I were to place it on these red blocks out here, this guy's just going to do nothing. The reason I have these orange blocks here is because he will pick up the workstation from these blocks, but if he were like pressed right into that corner on the far side, then if I placed the block here, he wouldn't actually pick it up. So I would use these blocks with caution. General rule of thumbs, stick within the 8 blocks surrounding him, and 2 blocks above and 2 blocks below him. So even if I were to place the composter down here, this guy will still pick up the profession, even though he has no direct line of sight to it. So if I were to place that glass block, he still sees it. Also, I don't know what I had there. Yeah, there we go. That looks right. If we place our... Why does he still have a profession? Oh. We'll... Do I still have a composter around here somewhere? No, I don't. Oh. Go to working times. There we go. He lost his profession. If I were to place his composter here, and we break in and take a look at him, so if we use that data thing and look at his brain, data get entity, this guy, we just want his brain, then we will see that he has a memory of his job site at the coordinates where we placed it. So if I were to do something like this, throw a piston down, and move his job site away, then he loses his profession as well, because he can no longer find it. So this is only the case if he is confined. If I were to release him and he was able to pathfind to the composter, then he would just pick up that profession and he'd be able to wander around and keep it too, because he'd just keep pathfinding back to the composter. But because he's confined, he'll keep forgetting where his workstation is. So villagers can restock their trades up to twice a day if they can reach their workstation. If they can't, then their trades will stay locked out. So this guy down here has probably actually restocked his trades by now. Yep. So if we look at this, then he's been able to interact with his composter and we can trade with him again. If he wasn't able to, then no matter how much time we waited, if we came back, we'd still see the X's over here and we wouldn't be able to trade with him. So the restock can only occur during the working times of the day. So if you come here during the night and his trade is locked out, you're not going to be able to trade with him until he starts working again. Even if he's right beside his composter, he'll never interact with it. So depending on the gossip that they're spreading, you can actually get better or worse prices from these guys. So if I were to trade with him a bunch, then he would lower his price because his gossip type would be trade. Also, if I were hero of the village, or if he was a zombie villager and I cured him, then he would give me a massive discount. You can actually see the discount by looking at the data. It's in here somewhere. Going cross-eyed looking at it all, to be perfectly honest. Oh, max uses. That's probably how many times you can trade this specific item with him. It's an emerald for something. But yeah, there's a discount area in here. It might not appear because I have no discount with him. Oh, and you just heard the sound. That means he interacted with his workstation again. If he had any trades that were locked out, then he would have restocked them just now. But yeah, that's trades. Alright, on to everyone's favorite, Iron Golem spawning. Or at least, I know it's my favorite. So we're going to toss a villager in this area, and he's going to pick up the shepherd profession. There we go. Just need the little nudge in the right direction. So, in previous versions of 1.14, the way that Iron Golem spawned was exclusively by gossip. So they had to change that up because they were finding that people were drowning in iron golems in their village. It would get to the point where there were more iron golems in your village than there were villagers, which may sound awesome until you realize if you get a negative reputation at any point, they're going to murder you and your village will just become off limits because you won't be able to get in there. So they changed it to an as-needed basis, as well as just scaling down the gossip. So you can still get an iron golem from gossip, it's just a lot harder to get one that way. But the new way that they introduced in 1.14.3 is if a villager is scared by a zombie, they have a chance to spawn one in. So there are a few parameters behind that. So if I were to throw a zombie down here, this guy's going to get scared, he's going to run away, but he's not going to spawn an iron golem. Because there are a few measures put in place to prevent you from just exploiting this. But don't worry, there are still ways to exploit it. Hopefully they won't fix it. So we're going to murder this guy for now. One of the things that you have to do is you have to have 3 villagers with professions. So we're going to throw some more guys in here. And we're going to throw the zombie down again. But you'll notice that, once again, they still do not spawn an iron golem. So the other thing is they have to have worked and slept in the last 24,000 ticks. So we're going to murder this guy once again. We're going to let them all go back to their workstations and work. Just to make sure that they've all worked, we're going to do that. Alright, they've all gone there. Now we're going to time set to, say, 20,000 and let them all go sleep. And we're just going to do that to make sure we don't get attacked by anything in the meantime. And we're going to go back to day. So now, if we switch back to easy again, as soon as I spawn the zombie here, we're going to get an iron golem in a few seconds. So these guys are all scared of him. They're all running around, and there's our iron golem. And he's going to come to the villager's rescue and murder this zombie. Well, when he gets there. We're going to kill him first, though. So, these guys are going to stay scared, and after... I did so many tests, but I didn't get any consistent numbers. The best I can tell is between 30 seconds and a minute and a half, we'll get another iron golem spawn and try and murder this zombie again. So, another way that they tried to prevent us from exploiting this is if these guys stay scared of the zombie, they're obviously not going to sleep and they're not going to work, which means that, hey, which means that after about one in-game Minecraft day, these guys are going to stop spawning iron golems again because they haven't worked or slept. So you have to find a way to rotate it so that they'll keep sleeping and working and everything. There is a really good iron golem farm design that I ran across and built in my own world. I'll link it in the description as well as show you later in the video. But yeah, we'll loop back to that later. So the other way to get iron golems is, if we run over here, is by these guys gossiping. So as I mentioned before, there are 6 different types of gossip, and one of them is golem. So if one of these guys, let's say this guy right here, switches his gossip type to golem, then if he goes around and gossips with 5 other villagers about golems, and they're also gossiping about golems, then these guys will attempt to spawn an iron golem. So how that works now, we're going to turn on chunk borders. Let's say our villager was standing right in the middle of this chunk. The game is going to look in a 16 by 16 by 16 area around the villager, so basically a chunk, and it is going to choose a random block to try and spawn an iron golem in. So let's say the game chose this block right here. It's an unobstructed block, so that means that we're going to get an iron golem. It was a success, and everyone's gossip type will switch to neutral again. However, let's say it tried to spawn this golem midair here. This is not a valid spawning block, so the spawn failed, and once again, all of these guys are going to go to neutral again. Or if it tried to spawn him inside one of these blocks here, then the spawn would fail as well, and these guys go to neutral. That's how they limited the spawns due to gossip, because before, if they gossiped enough and they tried to spawn an iron golem, it would just choose a valid spawning area and spawn it there. So it had an 100% success rate. So, that's iron golems. Alright guys, now that I've shown you some of the mechanics behind villagers, now it's time to look at the practical uses for them. So as promised, here is the design for the iron golem farm. This is not one of my own designs. This is one made by a guy called BlendsCraft TV. I'm going to link his video in the description. But basically what's happening here, if we do a flyby, so we've got 3 villagers sitting on top of beds, and we've got a piece of glass that extends every few seconds to obstruct the villager's view of the zombie. This happens throughout the day and night. That way they have a chance to work and sleep at some point, and it makes it so that they detect the zombie for a new time after doing that, and it allows them to continually spawn iron golems. I just logged in for the first time in a little while, so it's going to take a full day before they start spawning iron golems again, but that's the premise behind this guy right here. So really useful design. You can stack it as many times as you want. I believe you have to have a 20 block gap in between each of them, but if you did, I think it was 4 layers, it was something like 5,000 iron per hour. This thing is really awesome. Like, last time I was here showing my buddy how it works, I was only here for a couple minutes, but yeah, so much iron. And more poppies than I will ever need. So, that is one of the things. We're going to head back to my actual base now. This is just kind of an outpost that I have for farming stuff on this realm. Sleep real quick. We're going to take the nether back to my base, and I'll show you my villager trading hall. Alright, yeah, it's this way. It's been a while since I've been on this realm. The reason that I've had so much time to work on videos lately is because I actually injured myself. I tore a ligament in my knee, so I've been trying to focus a little bit more on YouTube since I really enjoy making videos. I just don't have the time to do it. Just gonna run by everyone here. My goal is not to kill wither skeletons today. Although I have a feeling they're still following me. No. Okay. But yeah, me and my friends were all pretty close together on the server, so that's why we've got a cluster of nether portals over here, and why even the portal over there, that's actually the portal to our stronghold that I came through. It's really not all that far away, and we got really lucky with the nether portal spawn there too. Alright, so this is my base here. It's quite large. It took hours upon hours upon hours to hollow this thing out, but this edition is fairly new, so I've just got villagers trapped inside smaller areas here. They're standing on top of their workstations so that they can keep refreshing their trades, and I can interact with them, and I've got shulkers all over the place. But yeah, I just keep bringing villagers in here from my villager breeder on the other side, which I'll show you in a sec. And yeah, villager trading halls are pretty self-explanatory. They're easy to make. You just have to make little containment modules for all the different guys and keep a little bit of storage nearby because, well, you're going to get a lot of stuff and you're going to need a lot of stuff to trade with them. So this villager breeder doesn't work very well anymore since the 1.14.3 update because it's running on old mechanics. I do still have a lot of villagers in reserve down here though, so that's a good thing. But one thing I forgot to mention in the breeding section of the video is in 1.14.3 they changed the breeding mechanic. So these guys right here, they're all employed. Employed villagers don't breed as often as unemployed villagers do because during the wander phase, they're able to breed all the time. These guys here, they barely have any time during their small period at the beginning and end of the day to breed, and their chance of breeding is much lower than an unemployed villager too. So if you want to see the most efficient farm that I've found, check out my other video that I made. I'll have a link on the end screen for that video probably. But yeah, so the idea behind it was they'd breed villagers, they would pathfind across the trapdoor, they'd fall down the hole there, and then they'd come into this area here. So what I would do from there is I'd throw down a minecart here. It would go into this corner here, and since all the villagers are pressed up against the glass, the minecart going into the corner here will actually pick up a villager through the corner and bring him over here. He's far enough away from the rest of the villagers that they're not going to pick up the profession block. I don't know what time of day it is right now, so this may not work. But I can continually place this down, check out his trades, destroy the block, and keep doing that until I get trades that I like. So one thing worth noting that I also forgot to mention earlier in the video is that as soon as I trade once with this guy, he's going to hold his profession. Even if you destroy his workstation, he will continue to have that profession. He just won't have a workstation, so he'll have to detect a new one in the area that he goes to. But from there, I'd send him on his way over this way. I'd just replace the track, and he'd go over to my villager holding area over there. And there you have it, guys. Minecraft villager mechanics for 1.14.3 and above. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know I had a ton of fun making it. If I forgot to mention anything, make sure to throw it down in the comment section below. It'll help improve the video. And also, if you need further explanation on something that I went over in the video, if you didn't understand how I explained it, let me know. I'll do my best to clarify and help you out with that. But yeah, make sure to leave me some feedback, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next one.